Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week as I make this and this into, I hope, an antler chandelier. Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary things. I'm a self-taught craftsman. I'm a novice woodworker and an amateur blacksmith. Each week I take on a new build project. I show you my process, I show you my perspective. I don't edit out any of my aha moments. I don't edit out any of my mistakes. My goal is to demonstrate that anybody with a cursory set of tools, a lot of elbow grease, a lot of curiosity, lots of mistakes, can make items that you might have thought otherwise were out of your reach or outlandish or fantastical or perhaps just plainly too difficult. I have no professional training. I have a basic set of tools that I've cobbled together over the years. Granted, I am blessed with a shop that I can use these tools in, but the items that I make each week tend to be whimsical in nature, fantastical, echoing times of a forgotten yore, if you will. Items like weapons and armor, structures, novelties, practical items that I use on my ranch here in Colorado. This week, I am embarking on a project that has been long overdue for me for quite some time, and that is a antler chandelier, a Elven, Viking, medieval, rustic antler chandelier. It's going to be a very interesting process and one that I'm really not quite sure how I'm going to accomplish what it is in my mind's eye. But without further ado, thank you for joining me this week. Let's get to the shop and get started. All right, there's one thing that I can't stand for, and that is when I find that certain kiddos have drawn doodles on my critically important scratch pads. This will not be tolerated! Okay, doing some rough calculations to create a three-dimensional spiral, you're going to want to start with the Fibonacci sequence, and then you're going to want to multiply times the circumference of pi, carry the 2, and then round down to the nearest prime fraction. That should get you in the ballpark. In selecting the metal that I was going to use for the framework, I had several options. I was suggested by my friend Phil to use a chain potentially, but I ended up settling on this metal banding. It's about 1.5 inches thick, actually in width, and about 1/8 of an inch thick enough that it'll be supportive of the structure, but I can still bend it, almost bend it all by hand. There were some sections that I needed to use some tools on. And by the way, I should clarify something. I actually love it when I find little pictures that my girls have left for me by surprise, little stickers on something, sometimes a sock, sometimes partially chewed gum, maybe a little woodland creature that I didn't know that I was going to be taking care of. It does make my day. Basically, forming this spiral was just a lot of bending by hand, stepping back, looking at it, bending again, looking at it. And then I decided to get smart, and I needed to fasten this to an immovable object or something that's as close as possible to an immovable object. And my welding table is really, really heavy. It's all steel. So I drilled some holes in it and then bolted it straight to the table so that I could start to wrench on this thing by hand and with some tools. Admittedly, a lot of time was spent doing this, more time than I care to say. I ended up finding out that this band that I chose was going to be too short, so I was going to have to add on another section, weld on another section. But that worked out just fine. I actually had another piece of metal that was probably perfect for it. It was a little bit thicker and a little bit shorter, and bending it took a little bit more articulation. So going back to my swage block to use it, this thing is for me, it's really heavy. It's probably 120 pounds, but as swage blocks go, this is probably one of the smaller swage blocks that you can find or that you can buy. I would love to come across a old antique swage block that was 200 pounds and all sorts of different form factors, but those things just are in really short supply, it seems, these days. So here I am bending this band. This will be the last portion of the upper spiral, so I'm gunning it to fold in on itself a little bit more.
I think once the antlers are mounted to this, the micro discrepancies and small areas that I can see with my eye that aren't clean, they will be pretty well hidden. I don't think that you'll be able to see them at all. So that's what I'm betting on. We're going to go with that. Couple final tweaks here to the form before I weld on that end piece. I want to make sure that I don't have to do any more fishing with it. And now it's time for a dance break with the daughter. When she comes to visit me in my shop, got to make it enjoyable for her, plus it's enjoyable for me. And if I'm going to be honest, I think she was intimidated with my dance skills. I'm just a much better dancer than she is. All right, kid, now get out of here. You're making me itch. You know, there's one thing I can't stand, and it's cute kids. Ugh. All right, gonna put this final piece of banding on there. And one of the great things about having a MIG welder, especially when you're not a good welder like I am, is that you can really lightly tack weld something on with a MIG welder, where I think it's a little bit more difficult with a stick or a TIG potentially to tack something on. But you get a look at it and tweak it. Now I bought this light fixture from Amazon. I think it was like 20 bucks, but it was what I was looking for. I wanted to have 8 bulbs on this chandelier, and unfortunately it came this way. I couldn't find a set of string lights which made sense for what I wanted to work on. But what I'm going to do is cut off each piece of these rods, and I'm going to use my bandsaw here. Although it's a blade for wood, and I thought this was aluminum. Turns out that it was steel, and does dull the blade a little bit, maybe steel on a wood blade. So I decided that I wanted each light bulb to be about every 18 inches or so. That was done, of course, using the Fibonacci sequence that I spoke of earlier. With that in mind, I begin to start wiring up the lights. Now, there are many things that I'm not good at, and electrical work is pretty close to one of the things I'm worst at. But hey, look, it actually turned on. That was a plus. So I bought these two-way electrical connectors. They're really cheap. I bought them off of a cheap website from a country who I won't mention, but whose name rhymes with Aunt Jemima. If Aunt Jemima ended with an N and it was Aunt Jemina, never mind. But they seem to work, and we'll see their test of longevity once I install them. I think that's actually going to be a little bit difficult to do, and probably a little bit straining on the electrical wiring that I've put together. But again, I checked the lights, each one I put on, I turned on, and they were working pretty well. Now I'm taking a gauge of how this thing hangs from the fulcrum, from the center point of the topmost ring, and it did not hang straight. So I needed to go ahead and weld on another bar that's going to span across the top section there. And from that, I can then position a bracket or a ringlet, if you will, any place that I want to. And actually, this is one of the first pieces of twisted metal I think I ever did back when I was first starting to forge. So I kept it, and that's where it's going to go. It worked super well. It hangs directly in the center as I was hoping that it would. Well, thank you for joining me for the first half of the Viking or Elven chandelier build. Next week we will finish the build up and turn this thing on and light up my shop and see how it looks. Until then, God bless, and we'll see you next week.